in Monster Hunter Rise, the Wirebug is a game changer.
That's a pretty big statement. What is the Wirebug and how does it change this game so much?
But basically it switches up the gameplay by making it a lot more, making your character a lot more maneuverable and a lot more quick, because if you've seen like older Monster Hunter games before World, they tend to look a little bit slower. And with this, I thought some people thought it would kind of revert to that older, slower style of gameplay. But the Wirebug really speeds things up, lets you zip around like the battlefield like really quickly. And it just it adds a new kind of like verticality to the game almost. But basically it's a little like all-purpose tool where you can like use it to zip through the air, you can use it to climb ledges, you can use it to like trap monsters and kind of like mount them for a rodeo and for some big damages. It's more tied to like the weapons, and I believe there are like 14 different kinds of weapons in the game, but the Wirebug has a unique action with each one of them. So if you're using a longsword and you use the Wirebug, you'll propel yourself up into the air, like latch onto a monster and then come like screeching down with the slashing like dive. Whereas if you're using the switch axe and you use the Wirebug, you'll like charge up for a massive spin attack. So it's kind of taking taking the weapon, working out which weapon works best against which monster, but also working out how you want to use the Wirebug attack against them. For example, if a monster's got like weak wings, you might use the Great Axe's Wirebug attack, which launches you up into the air and lets you do like a slash attack in the air to try and catch their wings.
So there's an element where even if you're an established player and you know your weapons, like that's my favorite, or that's my B, this is like my main and stuff like that, the Wirebug completely can change the mechanics and first of all like change how you play with it, but also you can just have fun.
Exactly, it's all kind of like learning to get to grips with these weapons again, because they have changed a certain way like the weapons work. I know they've changed like the way the insect glaive works. This time the little like mole drone that you send out against monsters, they've changed the way that works to a certain extent. But yeah, like the Wirebug is just like a really fun thing to get to grips with and work out what it does for each weapon, because it's different with all of them.
But in general for the game, for your review, what did you get? Like, did you think it was a good game, a bad game, good for newcomers, or just for the established players?
It's a really good game, and it's a really good game for all three of those kinds of player bases. I think if you have experienced a lot of Monster Hunter in the past, and you are just coming to this, I think you'll be fine, you'll be at home with this. If you just experience World for the first time, as I did, and then you're coming to this, I think you'll feel right at home, because it's a nice middle ground between the older kind of arcadey games and World's kind of HD, really refined gameplay. But also it's a really good place to start for the first time, which I'm sure with the amount of Nintendo Switches out there, as one of the best-selling consoles of last year, I'm sure there'll be people coming to this for the very first time, and they will feel at home with this. I think it's got a really nice kind of learning curve. I think it's actually got a much better like tutorial system. The World kind of easing players into all its various systems, because when you get down to it, it is a pretty complicated game, and you've got a lot of things working in tandem and working against each other. Like elemental attacks, weaknesses, different monsters are prone to what. So I think it's a really good starting point, but also I think people that have experienced World and are just hopping off onto this will feel right at home as well.
Now, onto the main question and the most important stuff. It's in the title. What are the monsters like?
The monsters are really good. They're brilliant. They're really well varied. Obviously this kind of game like lives or dies based on its like cast of monsters. They are fantastic. You've got kind of mainstays in the series like the Anjanath coming back once again, but you've got brand new monsters, some of which are like really kind of really interesting to tackle and take down, that you've got to think like tactically for, like the Magnalamo. I think that was in the second demo that was released for the game. But they're really interesting in that there's no like one solution for all of them. You really have to like learn each monster, but also there's not an overwhelming amount of monsters. I think I managed to calculate that there's roughly the same amount of monsters in this than there were at World when it first released in 2018. So you're not going to be overwhelmed by the amount of monsters you're immediately forced to face off against. And it does a really good job as well of introducing each monster slowly, step by step. It's not like you're forced to face off against like 2 or 3 at once on several different quests. And additionally, the monsters, and so the invasion mechanic from like World returns, where a monster can invade your quest. So you might go hunt down a Kesli and then you'll have an Anjanath jumping in from nowhere. That doesn't take place until the high ranks. So really, you're well within your comfort zone for the kind of low rank quests. And where you can just get to grips with kind of one monster at a time. And I think that's partly what makes this game so welcoming for newcomers. And it's really got like that kind of smooth difficulty slope, and that really kind of welcoming tutorial kind of grind.
So it does really seem like it's a really interesting step forward in the game and the genre to bring in new players.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, they've already outlined what's going to come after launch. In the April update, I believe they're adding 1 new monster, but they're unlocking the hunter rank as well. So like how you're graded, because at the moment it's capped at 7. Whereas, you know, with World, you had players getting into the hunter rank of like hundreds, just like a couple of weeks after the game launch. There's not going to be that this time. And that kind of feeds into this being like a very different game from World, in that you're not going to spend 100 hours grinding away at this game. Like, that's not this game. It's not like as much of a loot fest as World was, as good as World was. But this time they're kind of like restricting players a bit more, but they're also setting out that roadmap after launch where they're saying, okay, we're going to unlock the hunter rank from like this date, and we're bringing in more monsters in April and May. I don't know if it'll have like quite the tail as World did, because World was updated for like 3 years after launch. But yeah, they're definitely setting out a roadmap of like what they want to bring to the game after launch.
That's really nice, especially straight away, because it comes out 26th of March. But it's that thing where it's really nice. It's always reassuring when they go, look, there's new content coming in April and May, and you're like, what? That's just a couple of weeks or a month maybe afterwards. So they clearly know what they're doing. They've clearly got a roadmap, and they've clearly got like support behind the game. So that there's a reassurance there that if you buy this game and if you enjoy it, there is stuff that's going to be able to play as soon as you finish the main campaign.
The interim upgrades in, you know, like monthly or every other month, like that's going to be enough to bring like players back after launch, I feel. And you know, hopefully they'll kind of like introduce new monsters like the Chameleos in April, which like hides on walls and like blends itself in, and which is unlike anything else we've like got in the game at the moment. So that's like really exciting to look forward to as well.
Amazing. It sounds like a really interesting game, and it sounds like the kind of game that if you've been interested in Monster Hunter and you kind of want to jump in, this is the perfect one to like at least ease you in. It maybe doesn't have the huge world that World did, but there is much more of a tutorial and like an easing in, and there's going to be more content. So it sounds really interesting for new players and for established players as well. So if you want to read the full review, we've got it on the website and we'll link it below. Also, for all the guides on Monster Hunter Rise and all the tips and tricks on what you can do, we've got all of that for you on Games Radar.